Everyone thinks they know the most dangerous creatures from prehistory. They don't. From bone-crushing jaws that make great whites look pathetic, to flying nightmares with 40-foot wingspans, to ocean predators that could swallow a school bus. Today, I'm breaking down every horrifying creature from the prehistoric age, starting with the one everybody thinks they understand. Tyrannosaurus Rex. You already know this animal, 40 feet long, up to 8 or 9 tons, the most famous predator in history. But you don't actually know this animal, not even close. Let's start with the bite, nearly 12,800 pounds of force. That doesn't just pierce bone, it pulverizes it, completely crushes it into fragments. And here's where it gets weird. The skull had loose joints that functioned as a shock absorption system, meaning the T-Rex's head was literally engineered to survive the force of its own bite. It was built to crunch through the skeletons of animals the size of trucks and walk away fine. Now at forward-facing eyes, binocular vision, this thing tracked prey the way a hawk tracks a mouse, not the way a cow watches grass, and its brain-to-body ratio was comparable to modern primates. That's an uncomfortable fact nobody wants to sit with. There's still a debate about whether T-Rex was an active predator or a scavenger. Most paleontologists now favor active predation, but honestly, both versions are terrifying. One means it hunted you down. The other means it could smell your corpse from miles away and showed up to eat you whole. But for all its reputation, T-Rex isn't even the biggest land predator on this list. Spinosaurus? You just heard about T-Rex and its 40 feet of nightmare fuel. Spinosaurus was 50 feet long. Let that satisfying little number sink in for a second, because everything you thought you knew about the biggest predatory dinosaur to ever live? Wrong answer, but size isn't even the wildest part. This thing had a sail on its back made of neural spines reaching 5.6 feet tall. Nobody knows exactly why. Thermoregulation, intimidation display, fat storage, take your pick. The point is, it looked like something from another planet. Here's where it gets weird. In 2014, new skeletal reconstructions completely rewrote the book on Spinosaurus. It walked on all fours. It had paddle-shaped feet, dense bones built for sinking, not floating. Then in 2020, researchers discovered it had a massive paddle-like tail built for propulsion through water. This was a swimming dinosaur, the first one ever confirmed. A predator that hunted in rivers and on land simultaneously. Its snout was crocodile-like, long and narrow, lined with conical teeth designed for one purpose: gripping, slippery, thrashing prey that desperately didn't want to be eaten. Its bite force was only around 4,000 pounds per square inch. Laughable compared to T-Rex, but it didn't need to crush bone. It needed to lock down massive sawfish and coelacanths and never let go. Spinosaurus wasn't chasing you across a field, it was dragging you into a river. But if a 50-foot aquatic nightmare sounds bad, wait until you meet something that could challenge T-Rex on its own turf. Giganotosaurus. Giganotosaurus was bigger than T-Rex. Let that satisfying fact sink in for a second. At 42 to 45 feet long and potentially tipping the scales at 10 tons, this thing was one of the largest land predators to ever exist. It had longer legs, a lighter skeleton, and was built to run prey down rather than ambush it. But here's the thing. Its brain was roughly the size and shape of a banana. This animal was, to put it gently, not smart. Not even a little bit. And somehow, that might not have mattered at all. Giganotosaurus itself is known from very few specimens, but its close relative Mapusaurus tells a terrifying story. A bone bed found in Argentina contained at least 7 Mapusaurus individuals, all dying together in the same location. That's significant because it raises a real possibility: pack hunting among giant Carcharodontosaurids. Coordinated predation from animals with a banana for a brain. Picture a group of 40-plus foot predators working together to chase down prey, carving strips of flesh off with their forward slanting teeth while moving at full speed. Those teeth weren't designed to crush bone like a T-Rex, they were built to slash, hit and run over and over until the target bled out. Now, some paleontologists argue the bone bed doesn't prove pack hunting at all. They think the individuals were scavenging in the same area and died separately, which honestly only makes the whole thing more interesting because we still don't know the answer. Either these creatures were too dumb to hunt alone and figured out teamwork, or they were too dumb to hunt alone and just got lucky eating corpses. Both options are wild, but if a 45-foot predator with a banana brain unsettles you, wait until you hear about the snake that replaced the dinosaurs, Titanoboa. Phenom, most people assume Titanoboa slithered alongside the dinosaurs. It didn't, not even close. Like, Titanoboa evolved roughly 7 million years after the mass extinction wiped the dinosaurs off the face of the earth. This thing wasn't competing with T-Rex, it was what came after. And somehow it might be worse. Titanoboa stretched 42 to 50 feet long and weighed approximately 2,500 pounds, making it the longest snake that has ever existed by a significant margin. It dominated the dense tropical wetlands of what is now Colombia, sharing territory with early crocodilians. And when I say sharing, I mean Titanoboa was eating them. Its jaw structure shows it could consume prey up to 6 feet long. So picture a crocodile, then picture something big enough to swallow it. But here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Titanoboa couldn't just live anywhere. Yeah, as a cold-blooded reptile of that size, it required environmental temperatures of at least 86 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit just to keep its metabolism running, which means its existence is direct proof that the post-extinction tropics were significantly hotter than anything we experience today. Paleoclimatologists literally use Titanoboa as a thermometer. The size of the snake tells you exactly how hot the world was 60 million years ago. A nearly complete skeleton was discovered in 2009 in Colombia, giving scientists exceptional detail about its anatomy. Every measurement confirmed the same thing. This was a nightmare that used the entire planet's heat just to stay alive. But if a 50-foot snake makes your skin crawl, wait until you hear about the 8-foot millipede that came before it. Arthropleura. Her name, picture the biggest bug you've ever seen. Now multiply it by about 40. Arthropleura stretched 8.5 feet long, carried 30 armored body segments, and holds the record as the largest land arthropod ever documented. This thing was essentially a millipede the size of a small car, covered head to tail in overlapping chitin plating that made it look like a living freight train, and it only existed because of a freak atmospheric accident. 320 million years ago, during the Carboniferous period, Earth's oxygen levels sat at 35%, compared to the 21% we breathe today. That surplus is the only reason arthropods could grow this large. Their respiratory systems scale with available oxygen, so more oxygen meant bigger bodies. If those levels had stayed elevated, creatures like Arthropleura might still be crawling around today. They didn't stay elevated. The atmosphere changed and everything oversized suffocated into extinction. But here's where it gets funny. After all that buildup, after describing an 8.5-foot armored nightmare millipede, the twist is that it was harmless. Fossil evidence strongly suggests Arthropleura was a detritivore. It ate rotting plants and fungi, not animals, not flesh. Compost. You're looking at the most terrifying Roomba in Earth's history. That said, don't mistake peaceful for vulnerable. Its overlapping chitin armor was nearly impenetrable, designed to survive attacks from giant carboniferous scorpions and early predatory vertebrates. Complete skeletal remains are extremely rare, so most of what we know comes from fossil trackways and comparisons with modern millipedes, but the picture is clear: an unkillable tank that ate garbage, but at least Arthropleura minded its own business. The next creature on this list actively hunted everything it could find, and it did it with saber-teeth Gorgonops. Nobody talks about this thing, and that's a crime. Gorgonops lived 260 to 254 million years ago. Let that sink in. That's nearly 30 million years before the first dinosaur ever took a breath. While everyone obsesses over T-Rex and Velociraptors, this animal and its synapsid relatives were running the planet for longer than dinosaurs ever did, and they were terrifying. Picture something 6 to 7 feet long, low to the ground, built like a muscular predator with one defining feature: massive saber-like canine teeth and a bite force between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds per square inch. This wasn't an animal designed to eat plants and mind its business. Gorgonops was engineered to kill things larger than itself, but here's where it gets weird. Gorgonops wasn't a dinosaur, it wasn't even a reptile in the modern sense. It was a synapsid, which is the evolutionary line that eventually produced mammals. You are distantly related to this thing. Somewhere in your ancestry, millions of years back, this saber-toothed nightmare is part of your family tree, and it was violent. Fossils show healed bite wounds and shattered teeth consistent with brutal fights between individuals. These animals were going at each other hard enough to break their own fangs. Across the arid coastal environments of what is now South Africa, Gorgonops hunted smaller synapsids and early reptiles with zero hesitation. Then the Permian-Triassic mass extinction hit, the single worst extinction event in Earth's history. 81% of all marine species gone, 70% of land vertebrates gone. Even the apex predator that ruled the world for millions of years couldn't survive that, but at least Gorgonops stayed on the ground. The next creature on this list took to the sky, and it was the size of a small airplane. Quetzalcoatlus, 40-foot wingspan. Let that satisfying number sit for a second. Quetzalcoatlus had a wingspan larger than many private aircraft, making it the biggest flying animal that ever lived. And here's the part that breaks your brain. It weighed about 440 pounds. That's roughly the weight of one large human being. A creature with the wingspan of a Cessna weighed less than an NFL offensive lineman. Its bones were so impossibly hollow and its body so aerodynamically efficient that it literally rewrote what scientists believed was physically possible for a flying animal. But here's where it gets unsettling. You'd expect something this massive in the air to hunt like an eagle, right? Diving from altitude, snatching prey mid-flight. It didn't. Fossil evidence suggests Quetzalcoatlus hunted on the ground like a stork. A 40-foot nightmare stork that stalked across the late Cretaceous landscape on its folded wings, scanning for anything small enough to kill. And that toothless beak, 3 to 4 feet long, capable of swallowing prey up to 3 feet in length whole. No chewing, no tearing, just gone. And this thing shared an ecosystem with Tyrannosaurus rex. Same time period, same continent, same North American hunting grounds. Imagine standing in late Cretaceous Texas with a 9-ton predator on the ground and a 40-foot pterosaur stalking beside it like some kind of featherless giraffe bird hybrid. Recent biomechanical modeling increasingly supports that Quetzalcoatlus was an active predator, not just a scavenger picking at carcasses. It was hunting, on foot, with a face like a spear, but everything we've covered so far stayed on land or in the sky. The water was worse, and nothing proves that. Like Sarcosuchus, up until now, every creature on this list has been a land predator. That changes here. Sarcosuchus is the bridge between land and water, and it earned that spot by being one of the most terrifying things to ever patrol the riverbank. Picture a modern crocodile. Now multiply it by about 4. Sarcosuchus stretched roughly 30 to 39 feet long and weighed up to 9,000 pounds. Its skull alone was approximately 6 feet long. Just the skull. Hell, mate, that's taller than most adult humans, and those jaws were long, narrow, and lined with teeth specifically designed for one thing: snatching. It's like, that elongated snout was built to snap shut on fish and smaller prey with devastating speed. Once something was locked in that mouth, it was over. The prey could thrash, roll, fight, it didn't matter. Nothing was escaping that hold. But here's the thing that separates Sarcosuchus from every crocodilian alive today. It was sharing its ecosystem with dinosaurs. Its primary diet was likely fish and smaller animals, but at nearly 40 feet long, paleontologists believe it was more than capable of ambushing mid-sized dinosaurs that wandered too close to the water's edge. A crocodile big enough to threaten dinosaurs. That effectively made it one of the apex predators of its entire river ecosystem 125 to 112 million years ago. And it shared those waterways with Spinosaurus, two absolute monsters occupying the same rivers. Most paleontologists believe they avoided direct competition by targeting different prey, which is probably the only reason either species survived long enough for us to find their bones. Sarcosuchus spent most of its time in the water, but could move across land when it needed to. a predator with 0 safe zones. But if a 40-foot river crocodile sounds like the worst thing the water has to offer, wait until you see what was lurking in the open ocean. Megalodon. Everybody knows Megalodon was big. That's the headline. That's the movie poster. That's the entire cultural identity of this animal. But here's the stat that actually matters. Megalodon had a bite force of 18,100 to 20,000 pounds per square inch. T-Rex, the most famous predator in history, bit at 12,800. Megalodon bit harder by a factor of nearly 1.5. The king of the dinosaurs gets absolutely embarrassed in a jaw strength comparison by a fish. Now let's talk about the size, because the numbers alone don't do it justice. Megalodon reached 60 to 67 feet long, roughly 2.5 times the length of a great white shark. That's approximately the length of a bowling lane. Its teeth were 7.1 inches long, and unlike most predators, they were continuously replaced throughout its entire lifetime. It never ran out. Every single tooth that broke or wore down got swapped for a fresh one. An endless conveyor belt of serrated killing tools. But the real horror isn't the size or the teeth, it's the diet. Megalodon's primary prey were baleen whales, sperm whales, and dolphins. We know this because fossil whale bones have been found with matching tooth marks scored into them. This thing hunted animals the size of school buses as its regular Tuesday afternoon meal. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is it still out there? No, it went extinct 3.6 million years ago as oceans cooled and prey populations collapsed. Ocean temperature records confirm it. The complete absence of modern tooth discoveries confirms it, and marine mammal population data confirms it. The deep ocean does not hide a 60-foot apex predator. The real Megalodon is more terrifying than any conspiracy theory because it actually existed. But if you think Megalodon owned the ocean, wait until you meet the creature that dominated the seas 60 million years before it even evolved, Mosasaurus. You'd think after Megalodon the ocean couldn't get worse. You'd be wrong. Mosasaurus was a marine reptile that ruled the late Cretaceous seas, confirmed specimens stretching 50 to 56 feet long, with some potentially reaching over 70 feet. This thing was patrolling the oceans at the same time Megalodon's ancestors were still evolving into something dangerous. Mosasaurus didn't need to evolve. It was already the finished product, but the size isn't even the scary part. Let me explain. Mosasaurus had a double-hinged jaw. Similar to a modern snake, its skull could flex and expand, allowing it to swallow prey larger than its own head. And this isn't speculation. Fossil evidence from related mosasaurs like Thalassotidin shows these animals consumed other marine reptiles whole. An entire creature swallowed like a snack. The jaw literally shifted apart to make room, then snapped back into place. That's not a predator. That's a biological nightmare. And when it wasn't swallowing things whole, it was crushing them. Mosasaurus had robust conical teeth designed for gripping and pulverizing hard-shelled prey, giving it one of the most devastating bites of any marine reptile in history. Combine that with paddle-like limbs and a vertically flattened tail built for speed, and you've got an ambush predator that could chase you down in open water. It ate fish, sea turtles, other mosasaurs, and anything else unlucky enough to be swimming. Nothing was off the menu. Here's the thing though. Mosasaurus gets all the cultural spotlight thanks to Jurassic World, but it wasn't the only apex mosasaur out there. Tylosaurus was a slightly smaller but incredibly aggressive relative that dominated the western interior seaway millions of years earlier. Popular media consistently ignores it entirely. Mosasaurus is the one you know. Tylosaurus is the one nobody talks about, but if a creature with a snake jaw and bone-crushing bite feels overwhelming, wait until you meet something that didn't even need teeth to become the most terrifying predator in the ocean. Dunkleosteus. Most predators have teeth. This thing didn't need them. Dunkleosteus had 0 teeth in its mouth. Instead, it had razor-sharp bony plates that functioned like self-sharpening guillotine blades. Every single time it bit down, the plates scraped against each other and honed themselves sharper, like the edge literally never dulled. It got worse with every bite. Despite having no teeth whatsoever, Dunkleosteus generated a bite force of roughly 8,000 pounds per square inch. That's enough to crush bone, armor, and anything unfortunate enough to be in front of it. But the real nightmare is the speed. Its jaw opening was measured at roughly 20 milliseconds, with the full feeding strike completing in under 60 milliseconds. For reference, that's faster than most modern sharks can even begin to react. By the time you registered it moving, the bite was already finished. You were already in two pieces. Its entire head was encased in dermal bone armor. Only its eyes and gill slits were exposed. Everything else was plated like a biological tank. This wasn't just a predator, it was a fortress that hunted you. Now, here's what people get wrong. Dunkleosteus was not a dinosaur. It wasn't a shark, it was a placoderm, an entirely separate class of armored fish that no longer exists anywhere on this planet. The whole lineage is gone, and it lived 382 to 359 million years ago during the Devonian period. That's over 120 million years before the first dinosaur ever walked the earth. While land was still mostly empty and barren, this thing was already the apex predator of the ocean, hunting armored fish, sharks, and anything else unlucky enough to share the water. Fossil evidence shows bite marks consistent with its bony plates on multiple prey species. Terrifying predators didn't start with dinosaurs, they started with this. But if you think bone plates for teeth sounds bizarre, wait until you see the creature that had a literal circular saw inside its mouth, Helicoprion. Every creature on this list earned its spot through size, power, or pure killing efficiency. Helicoprion earned its spot by being the most alien thing that ever lived on this planet. At around 13 to 25 feet long, it was a serious predator in terms of size. But it wasn't the fastest swimmer. It wasn't armored like Dunkleosteus or built like a tank, but it had a circular saw for a mouth. And that changes everything. Its lower jaw contained a spiral of over 130 serrated teeth arranged in a rotating whirl. Not rows of teeth, not fangs, a literal chainsaw made of bone coiled inside its jaw like a scroll of nightmares. Nothing alive today does anything remotely close to this. Nothing extinct does either. Helicoprion stands completely alone. And here's the thing. Scientists couldn't even figure out where the teeth went. For over a century after the first fossils were discovered, paleontologists argued about whether the tooth whorl sat in the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the tip of the snout, or curled off the face like some kind of biological circular saw blade. The answer, lower jaw, wasn't confirmed until relatively recently. That means this creature baffled some of the smartest people on Earth for over 100 years. Just the teeth. Just figuring out where they belonged, it gets weirder. Helicoprion wasn't even a shark. It was a chimera relative, a completely separate lineage with different internal anatomy. That makes the tooth design even more bizarre because it didn't evolve from anything we can easily compare it to. Current evidence suggests the whorl functioned as a suction-feeding, crushing mechanism for grinding hard-shelled prey or stripping flesh, not the slashing weapon it looks like. But honestly, the reality is almost creepier than the myth. Helicoprion first appeared around 290 million years ago and persisted well beyond the Permian. It actually survived the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the largest mass extinction in Earth's history, and kept swimming into the early Triassic before finally disappearing around 225 million years ago. That means the most alien marine predator on the planet outlasted an apocalypse that wiped out roughly 90% of all marine species. It watched the world end and kept going. And the fact that something this strange eventually vanished anyway tells you everything about how brutal the ancient oceans truly were. We're still trying to understand creatures like this over a century later. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every dangerous dinosaur explained, click the video on the screen now.